Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, and here I'm doing a dedicated audio review of the Kia Sportage. If you want a detailed review of the vehicle itself, do check it up on your pop-up banner, down in the description below, or indeed in the pinned comments. Now, to kick off this review, I would like to point out that if you're looking at the plug-in hybrid, the hybrid or the regular petrol model, they'll all have the same audio configuration. Indeed, over here, the level 2, level 3 and the GT line trims have a 6-speaker setup with a 4-channel internal amplifier which outputs a total power output of 200 watts. You have got 40 watts drivers found within each of the 4 doors and 20 watt tweeters found within each of the A-pillars. If, however, you go for the GT Line S, you'll have a 340 watt Harman Kardon audio system that also has an external amplifier, 8-channel to be more specific. Now here you have got 20 watt tweeters, which are still positioned within the A-pillars, a 50 watt center driver. You've then got 50 watts in the front doors, each of them of course, and then you've got 25 watts within each of the rear doors. To complete the system, you have got a 100 watt subwoofer which is positioned in the boot. Now for you to tinker around with the audio drivers, at least on the 6-speaker audio configuration which is on review, you'll want to navigate on the 12.3 inch display. Here I've left the speed dependent volume at normal, added 3 notches to treble, 1 notch to mid-range and 2 notches to bass. Of course, it's all very subjective, although I will point out why I've chosen this EQ further down in this video. Now to connect up to the infotainment system, you have got Bluetooth. The SBC and AAC codecs are supported only. However, if you do want higher fidelity playback, you want to plug in your smartphone. Here, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are supported. Although it's worth noting that at the time of filming, there is no wireless support for these third-party mobile operating systems. So moving swiftly on, let's talk about cabin noise. And here the objective measurements that are recorded within the cabin will be on your screen. For those who are subscribed, you'll know that these measurements are actually pretty low. And indeed, the Kia Sportage does do a tremendous job, specifically at lower speeds. However, I did find that my sound measurement tool wasn't exactly able to pick up some of the low-end reverberations that were present at higher speeds. And this was, for example, when traversing on certain motorway routes. This is because of tyre noise and also a little bit of wind noise that could be heard deflecting off the A-pillars. Still, in the grand scheme of things, it was pretty minimal and did leave me with a pretty pleasurable experience. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get into an audio demo. I'll be placing the camera and microphone in 4 separate locations and playing back a track. It's from Priya J and it's titled Like Me. Now, an audio demo over YouTube is never ideal, so let me get onto my subjective opinion. Now, first off, in terms of its sub-bass extension, it is pretty much cut short, and that is mainly due to the fact that you've only got those 4 audio drivers positioned within the cabin that are trying to drive some of that low-end prowess. Furthermore, you've got no sort of subwoofer to really try and aid it. Indeed, in this respect, if you are looking for that better sub-bass rumble, you'll have to look elsewhere, or indeed go for the GT Line S, because that Harman Kardon audio system has got a 100 watt subwoofer, which is actually pretty impressive. Now, as for the mid-bass, however, I've got no real complaints. The 6-speaker audio system that comes fitted as standard across most of the trim range actually does do a pretty good job. It left me excited, be it when I was sat at the front or rear of the cabin. Now, the same praise, however, could not be said about its mids. They're really recessed and pushed back. So much so that you might want to actually go pretty crazy on the mid-range EQ. However, by doing so, you'll take away from the overall accuracy. and as a result, as you might have noticed, I only added one notch to my mid-range EQ. And this is because it did take away from the overall accuracy and added a slight little bit of an odd reverb, which, knowing my audio and having listened to hi-fi speakers and ones that are at home or even headphones or earphones, I can say that that's not how the artist meant to have their audio reproduced. And this respect means that you just have to be accustomed to a pretty V-shaped sound signature. Now, as for the highs at the front of the cabin, they do a decent job. The tweeters that are positioned within the A-pillars provide a little bit of that zingy nature. However, at the rear, it just feels a little bit flat, and that is of course due to the fact that you have got no dedicated tweeters. The same could be said about the Harman Kardon audio system, which in this respect is actually quite surprising that the manufacturer has not integrated tweeters in the rear doors. Now, as for its overall soundstage, it's actually decent when it comes to the overall instrument separation, but when it comes to the overall width and depth and feeling quite engaged with the music that you're listening to, it just feels a bit too unidirectional. There's just a little bit of lack of width and depth because there is no extra audio drivers that I found at the rear of the cabin, and even in the Harman Kardon audio system where you've got that center speaker, it just doesn't really give you that sense of fulfillment, at least not in my opinion. So ultimately what I'm trying to say over here is that the overall audio system in the Kia Sportage is actually quite disappointing. The 6-speaker system doesn't actually do that well across the sound frequency range, and given the overall price of the vehicle, it would have been great if Kia was able to offer the Harman Kardon audio system or other as an additional option. Instead here you're forced to get the GT Line S. Now, as for the GT Line S itself, the Harman Kardon audio system will undoubtedly be a little bit better. But if you look at some of its alternatives, they provide a far better audio configuration, and therefore something that you might want to consider if audio is one of your top priorities. Now, I'd be curious to know what you make of the audio system within the Kia Sportage down in the comment section below, and of course some of the alternatives that I've mentioned throughout this video, or some of the ones that I've referenced in my head, will be down in the description below. Now, if you've liked this independent detailed review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.